What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Downloadable content.
Microtransactions.
DRM.
Pre-order DLC.
Dislike content. Blind. Stupid fucking fanboyism.
I'm going to attempt to be as objective as I can in this video, because I actually have a bit of a disdain for free-to-play games. There was a point where in gaming history where I would say that free-to-play games with microtransactions is okay. But unfortunately, we see a lot of developers, big and little, abuse the free-to-play platform. In fact, it's abused so much in this modern age of gaming that I don't consider those types of video games an actual art, a part of art. I consider them more of a product. Now, let me be clear. I am well aware that a video game, a film, a comic book, they are products. I'm aware of this. But I'm referring to the treatment of an art form. And when you look at something like Apex Legends, even World of Warcraft, which is infested with microtransactions in this modern age, is treated more like a product rather than an art form. And to me as a gamer, that's really the saddest part. I mean, there was a time to where I actually played a decent amount of free-to-play games, obviously on the PC. This is before the concept of smartphones, ladies and gentlemen. And I enjoyed them to a certain aspect and degree. But over the years, I kind of just stopped playing them. And that's because they started to abuse this concept of microtransactions in free-to-play games. If you inherently doubt me, you can look up any current game, any current free-to-play game that existed back in the late 90s or the early 2000s, and compare the microtransactions that they sold in that time during to what they sell now. And you can inherently see that they're treating it more like a product rather than an art form. And that's where, you know, my bias inherently comes into play when it comes to free-to-play games in this modern age of gaming. When I look at something like World of Warcraft, which I played back in the day when it was a subscription-based, and now it's infested with microtransactions, it's a garbage game. And it's a garbage game because of what the developers and how they're treating it. They're treating it more like a product rather than an art form. When I look at Apex Legends and the clear price gouging surrounding this controversy, and the loot boxes in general, clearly treating it like a product rather than an art form. And, you know, in my opinion, this is where my bias would come in. Even if there was no such price gouging, like there was a more ethical way for you to get the items in the current Apex Legends event that they have, it's still a bullshit, dog shit game in my opinion, simply because, like I was stating, you know, there was a time where free-to-play games, yeah, they had microtransactions, but they didn't inherently abuse it. They still treated it like it was an art form rather than a product. And unfortunately, as we all know, Electronic Arts loves treating their multiplayer, co-op, and single-player games like a product rather than an art form. I mean, we see this in the movie industry a lot. Disney, for example, when it comes to Star Wars franchise, they're treating it more like a product rather than an art form. All right? Assassin's Creed, the series. Even if we don't refer to the microtransactions, Ubisoft still treats Assassin's Creed like a product rather than an actual art form. This is ultimately told because, you know, they had to release like an Assassin's Creed game every year. They were busting it out like no minata. Ultimately treating this art form like a product. And then, of course, they take that extra step in this modern age and they add microtransactions into the mix of Assassin's Creed games, and they just made it more treatment of a product rather than an art form. And I think that's the biggest problem when it comes to video games in itself. You know, I as a consumer understand that they are a product, all right? I understand that they are created with the goal to generate money for said company. I understand that, all right? But to me, there's a fine line between, if you want this to be considered an art form, you need to treat it like an art form. The moment you decide not to treat it like an art form, you're no longer making art. You've turned this art form into a product. And, you know, this whether we're talking single-player games, whether we're talking free-to-play games. There used to be a time that I actually played free-to-play games. I even purchased a few microtransactions in some older games. Why? Because they weren't excessive. They weren't in your face. But, you know, it doesn't inherently surprise me that this is the situation that we're in. You look at Madden. You ultimately have to ask yourself why Madden isn't just a free-to-play game. Besides $60, it literally plays like a modern free-to-play game that gouges you for every coin that they can get from you. It's no longer about the art of what these games could represent. It's about treating that art form like a product. And I think that's the biggest insult to the gaming industry in this modern age. And you know, the biggest problem here is it's not just developers and publishers that are at fault. It's also gamers that are at fault as well. And we're not just talking about the gamers that defend, you know, the practice of microtransactions or price gouging or so on and such forth. Because the biggest problem when it comes to microtransactions is you have, the majority you have is two groups. People that don't like any of them, and people that like some of them. Now, I have more respect for the people that don't like any kind of microtransactions. They don't sit there and they don't make excuses for it's cosmetic. I mean, game developers and publishers have fallen so low that this art form that they wanted to be considered an art form, they no longer treat it like that. They treat it like a product. And it's gotten so bad that they've even gotten gamers to treat video games like a product rather than an art form. When I look at something like Apex Legends and the clear price gouging going on there, number one, it doesn't surprise me because it's got Electronic Arts' name associated with it. I mean, this is the same people that produce FIFA and Madden. All right? They care about as much of some kind of artistic representation from the actual people that make the games. They don't. All they care about is money. They don't give two shits about any kind of artistic design or any kind of artistic degree that the creators want to put into it. They don't agree with the concept of that art takes time to create. They just want to push these games out there. There's a reason why Madden every fucking year is the same damn game. And dumbass people still flock to it. And yes, if you buy that game, you're a dumbass. I don't even care if you don't purchase the microtransactions. They're literally selling you the same fucking game every year. The only difference is they change the roster, maybe they upgrade the graphics, and they'll add in a feature here or there. Maybe you'll get lucky and they added an old feature back in. But, you know, the following there, they'll probably take that feature out because this is Electronic Arts. It's more, which is, you know, this is the biggest problem and the biggest insult to game development in general or just art itself is that Electronic Arts has the audacity to put the word art in their fucking title of their business. Because you make no fucking art, Electronic Arts. Anyway, I think I'm kind of tangenting off now, but I think you got the gist of my thoughts here, alright? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video in some fashion or form. And remember, gamers, if you're not voicing your thoughts and concerns about the bullshit treatment of video games, you just might be a part of the motherfucking problem.